this is way up on the side of a pretty tall glacial mountain. It used to be capped by snow. There was cover over this ice, and it was only recently the snow melted. And guess what? It exposed these beautiful veins like the sherbet. They did a lot of channel sampling very early time period, and they got some really nice thicknesses, but also really nice grades. Like gold was typically 10, 15 gram gold equivalent over, a few meters, like 6 to 10 meters, something like that. Really caught my attention, particularly with the continuity and the geometry of the thing, with all of the veins being effectively above the valley bottom.
Hey everyone, happy Friday. Glad to be here. It's been quite a week, lots of conferences. It was pretty exciting, actually. This was the most energy and the most amount of people I've seen in a very long time. That's between the Metals Investor Forum, VRIC, and Roundup. Very well attended, to the point that, I was quite excited to see the amount of people, amount of new people, a lot of retail, a lot of funds. They were showing a lot of interest. And I think there's a lot of factors at play here. Now, before I get into some of those factors, one of the most interesting conversations there was with retired Colonel Douglas Macgregor. He was senior advisor to the United States Secretary of Defense. But his position, especially seeing that Trump come in, was this recognition of logistics, critical metals. How do we get these critical metals to feed into all of the big wishes they have? So with this new announcement of Stargate, $500 billion for an AI project, that requires immense amount of critical metals. And Without getting into the politics of everything and the tariff war and this and that, yes, the U.S. does need Canada 100%, whether it's for oil and gas or whether it's for critical metals. They simply do. This is part of the fun of dealing with very robust change coming from the South. And overall, that Trump effect, I think, is actually fantastic and has a huge upside potential for business, but specifically for our business. There's no guarantees here by any stretch of the imaginations. A lot of the puzzle pieces have to come into play. But when I was speaking to as many people as I could, and believe me, I spoke to a lot, there was this underlying optimism that with the changing of basically policy, the potential changing of policies here in Canada, with the possibility of having a pro-business government in Canada, and certainly there's a pro-business government in the U.S. Whether you look at someone like Stephen Druckenmiller, who's worked with Quantum Fund with George Soros, he has never seen the U.S. be more pro-business than it is today, and with all the announcements in the past week. Now, does that mean the stock market's going to keep on, escalating? No. And I mentioned this in our blogs that there isn't a direct correlation between a strong economy and a strong stock market. The stock market is a different entity, and we've seen a terrible economy in the last 4 years in both the U.S. and Canada, with a huge stock market in the U.S., but not in the stocks that there should have been. Like, there should have been a push in mining and metals if one was to follow the logical reasoning behind climate change narrative and everything. There should have been a massive push, massive influx of capital. And there was some, and I give lots of credit that there was some, but not really anything meaningful, and nothing that, really made any substantial change. There's some bedrock was kind of set. But once again, when you lean into an ideology that says we need that climate change is real, but also at the same time, we can't extract anything because of special interest groups or whatever ideological cause, well, you run into issues. So when you have two conflicting narratives of the world's going to end by 2050 or 2030 or whatever reason or date, but we must have these solutions, but at the same time saying, well, we shouldn't have these solutions because we're worried about plant life or a cactus or a river or something, despite even companies passing the regulations and standards and still withholding permits, slowing down, business. And if you ask any chatbot, like any AI bot out there, and ask it the significant challenges and obstacles, it's going to tell you government regulation, special interest groups, and policy when it comes to getting these natural resources and extracting them. That's unfortunate. And that's something that Douglas, the Colonel McGregor, talked about. And this shift that's happening throughout all of the West, that people are recognizing that if you wanted to achieve any of these goals, we really need to focus in on it. Certainly China does. I mean, they are nationalistic in their sense of having an energy plan. There's nothing wrong with it. The Americans should be patriotic and should be focusing their best efforts on how are they going to meet the needs of, and the incredible increasing needs of, energy for their own country, just as Canada should be. These are obvious things that the average person is going to say, yeah, that makes sense. I should be doing that. And that's why whoever comes into power here, I'm hoping that they have a bit more common sense as far as business goes, and really hope to open up this market. And that sentiment is underlying and percolating not only in Canada, but through all of Europe. We're seeing this rise up of realizing the strategy before isn't working. We need a new strategy. And in the US, it's pretty huge. I mean, if you ask right now, JP Morgan Chase annual survey revealed that 65% of business leaders expressed optimism about the national economy, doubling from the year before. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce found that 72% of small business owners expect revenue growth in 2025 that they didn't expect before. There's a study by Teneo, which surveyed 700 global public company CEOs and report a 32-point year-over-year increase in CEOs expecting the global economy to improve the first half of 2025. Also noting that 50% of global CEOs are accelerating activities and investments and hiring based out of the US election. Now, imagine now if we could translate that into Canada. Canada is sitting on so much wealth. And I mentioned this, ad nauseum, on a brainstem. I just picked Waterloo because it's easy, it's simple. People could go look at University of Waterloo. So much talent, lots of brain power, just sitting there, waiting to be amplified and funded. We also have all of the critical metals that are needed and all of the energy for a transition. And we can do it safely under extreme regulations, efficiently, and maximize our economy. Canada is a leader in this. We should be letting loose. We should be firing on all cylinders. And there is lots of optimism around that. Does it mean it's going to happen? I don't know. We're dealing with politicians, and that is always a problem. And that miffs me sometimes when you hear people say that politics isn't a big an issue when it comes to any of these decisions, that usually the markets just focus on the markets. I would say under the last decades, up until you hit 2012, that would be the case. Because most of the US system was, there was no real left and right. It was basically a one-party system. There were slight nuances of difference, but no real big, huge change. The difference now is startling. It's completely opposite the ideologies. And you have to have a pro-business government that wants these projects done, that allows permitting and gets regulations going. We see a lot of optimism from Rio Tinto as well. They said on Wednesday that they're very optimistic about President Donald Trump granting final permits for Resolution Copper in Arizona. They themselves have faced 12 years of permitting battles. And that mine alone could supply up to a quarter of the U.S. domestic copper needs for decades. And they've held it up. Why? There's lots of whys. You can watch all sorts of NGOs, whatnot, talk about reasons why. But this is a problem. You can't have both narratives and push them. You can't say climate change is affecting the world. It's a disaster. It's all going to happen. Yet we're going to stop every attempt you have at solving the issue. We need copper for all the electrification that's happening. And if you're tired of hearing about EVs, like I say to people, fine. There's just basic infrastructure. There's just immigration growth to build housing. If you want to get real bare bones, the U.S. needs a ton of infrastructure growth. Never mind, if you want to talk about AI power and all the nuclear or say robotics, Elon Musk is saying 10 million robots, these like human-like robots by 2030 or 2028. Do you know how much metals, lithium iron phosphate batteries, graphite, you name it, and copper that's required to build a robot? We've got an article about it. It's quite a bit. So if you don't like that narrative, go with robots. This is what we need to get across to people, and we're starting to see it. And it is a narrative at this point, but what's backing up that narrative are some incredible results that we saw coming out of the show or in line with the show. And arguably, there's going to be some, here. I would say there's 3 companies that put out significant assay results and that were rewarded and really stole the show. 2 of them stood out by far, and that's Goliath with their remarkable hole of 35.52 grams per ton gold equivalent over 39 meters, including 132 grams per ton over 35 meters. That's a remarkable hole. That's huge. And I would say that that's arguably the best because it's up 51% in the last few weeks. And that's gone to a 217 million market cap. And this is early stages with lots of results to come. We had Dr. Quinton Henning on talking about this. Fantastic story. The other one was Amark Resources, which has pulled back a fair amount today, but boy, they hit huge results as well, jumping 200+%. I think at one point on the first day of announcement, 278%. And then there's a bit of a sell-off because people want to take some profits. And it's sitting at a 44-cent gain for the month, but really it's not a month. We're talking from January 15th. So we see that people are seeing, huge results, outstanding results that are very like, it isn't just that there's a narrative. There's some companies with huge results. Someone that was kind of ignored that had huge results was another one, Benton Resources. I had to do a bit of digging into them because I didn't quite know them, but I saw them on Mining Hub. 22 meters grading 7.47 copper, including 8 meters grading 11.93% copper. That's a huge hole. I think it's up 20%, but it's not getting, they've got some financing issues. I think they're working out from flow through they've done before. So often great results mean that some of these flow throughs dump stock. But so what? That to someone who's looking new and getting excited, I'm going to be digging into Benton and see what they're up to, because those are huge numbers. It's great. So you've got these 3 stories that are significant real results that help to strengthen the narrative of, are we doing this transition or not? On top of the narrative of, we see Trump saying, hey, if you've got $1 billion project in the US, we're going to make permitting fast for you. And that's the next theme I want to touch on, because it's a theme that was talked on by Douglas McGregor as well. Was if we look at somewhere like Indonesia, their parliament, they proposed mining law revisions. For them, they said, we want to focus on companies based on investment size, plans, and adding value to minerals, job creation, and domestic workers. They're looking to grant access to specialty groups, also to help education to focus on that. They are focused on advancing mineral processing industries and energy transition efforts, and China's paying a lot of attention. This is what we need to see, not only in the US, but in Canada. Significant changes in law to make sure that all these permits and regulations are met, and we can get at the work that needs to be done. Because it is often, if you start dig deep into it and you actually believe in the climate change narrative and that we need to have these critical metals, you'll be quite frustrated and annoyed to see what actually holds up any of the business being done and any of the good work and efforts that are done that get thwarted. And I'll leave it at that, because once again, you get into the political realm and we try to avoid that. But unfortunately, like I said before, you can't avoid it nowadays. It isn't that business gets to do business. It's now that, especially in far left countries, it's that they're intertwined. If you want to do business, you have to work with the government. And there's obviously some good to that, because you need to make sure that the people, the environment, the land, those stakeholders need to be protected, listened to, understood, all of that. But that's a given. Once you look into, say, mining in Canada, we've taken it to such an extreme that just business gets thwarted. And I'm hoping that there'll be significant changes, that we can actually become a world leader, and we could dominate the space if we wanted to. And that, once again, following every regulation to the T. And we'll hope for that. With Saudi Arabia, a lot of people went off to the Forum conference. Frank Trustra was speaking about that. I know a number of other companies and people that had gone as well. And just look at Saudi Arabia. They are looking to, they've just kind of, they bought a 20% stake in Pakistan's Reko Deek copper and gold mining project. It's valued at approximately $9 billion. It's looking to have annual production of 400,000 tons of copper and 500,000 ounces of gold. That's significant. So that's a big amount. Saudi Arabia also, as part of their economic diversification plan, and this is smart. We're talking about a country that's it's an oil and gas nation. It's an energy nation, knowing that it needs to diversify and sees that we're doing this. We're doing a shift. We're in a transition, but they're doing it properly. Canada could be doing exactly the same strategy, leaning on its wealth of energy, but then diversifying properly. They are going to spend, for their Vision 2030 economic plan, the kingdom announced nearly $100 billion in new investment opportunities in mining, with approximately $20 billion already committed to advanced projects under construction. Now, if you look at Canada, we have an article out that I'm working on right now that's just to say significantly less. I know we don't have the same budget, arguably, that Saudi Arabia has, but there's no reason why we couldn't be focused on doing something at scale of similar size to develop out our strategy to diversify and provide an economic blueprint so that our country could be wealthy and lift us out of the situation we're in. So big, huge results there. Very exciting. What's the other thing that I want to touch on here is Fortescue hydrogen project faces uncertainty. Hydrogen has been something very interesting. We see a lot of money poured into it, billions and billions, whether you look at Australia with Fortescue or Plug in the US, a lot of government funding. We think there's lots of hope in hydrogen, but I think it's going to take a backseat for a little bit here. I don't see Trump wanting to lean so much on that. I think also we're going to see a lot of pushback on some of the EV forced initiatives by the government. It doesn't mean there won't be growth. Once again, Elon Musk has a car company. Now, he would say it's a robotics company, that the cars are just loss leaders. But people are still going to buy hybrids and electric, as they should. I think that they're phenomenal cars, that there's obviously an obvious need for them in the transition. But once again, he's got the ear of Mr. Trump, and that critical metals and those battery metals, although they may not get the limelight, those are still going to be absolutely critical because China's moving forward. They're still going to dominate. We see Saudi Arabia doing the same. And remember, this is all under the larger conversation of BRICS. So we see that there is on the outset a lot of possibilities for our sector, for a lot of growth, to spread the wealth around, to say, listen, do you know how many engineers we're going to need just for the nuclear story to meet all these billionaires and their need to fund their AI data centers? That's a lot of education. It's a lot of PhDs. It's also a lot of specialty construction crews that need to go build this all out. That also includes building roads to some mines and routes that are a bit more remote. I mean, there's no end to the amount of business that can be developed and motivated and encouraged if young people say, oh, you know what, I could get into this and have a construction company that focuses on specialty roads, whatever it happens to be. If that narrative is out there where young people feel like there's a chance to create a future and that there's a government and a top-down approach to encourage them to be more entrepreneurial in nature and to also get behind the causes that they love and show them a roadmap of how they can do it. And I don't mean that you're getting paid by a government to sit in a desk and not, is that no, that you are based on merit, based on your drive and your intelligence, that you go out and start initiatives, and those are funded by industry, by government or whatnot, or grants or whatever it is, to encourage people to get out. I think that that's why I'm so optimistic of 2025. We had some huge results. The stock market's going to be the stock market. It's going to be challenging, but this is where we are fortunate in a way. When you have unloved, disrespected markets that are critical, they're essential. You can't get around it. Those eventually, it's going to come together. 2 and 2 will equal 4 eventually. And a lot of these companies that are pennies to the dollar, that have huge results, that if they were just given a chance to add the critical resources that we need, would escalate quickly, and money would flow into Canada. Believe me, you can see that as soon as Trump was elected, not necessarily even took power, tons of deals of money were flowing into the U.S. because they knew U.S. is open for business. We need that here in Canada as well. And I would strongly guess that if we get a government that says, we are online, we want to work with the US, we want to help be a feeder system to help them grow, as well as our own countries to build data centers, say like the one that Kevin O'Leary has mentioned in Northern Alberta, we stand to be on an incredible accelerated path. And that's why I've got so much hope for 2025. We've got a bunch of different opinions and different blogs on our Substack. Make sure you go check that out. And that was the consensus, or the optimism that I felt from all of these conferences that we had. I want to reiterate, they were full. They were really doing quite well. And it's been a long time since we've seen that much interest. Now, of course, it's small if you compare it to the interest that there is in AI or in robotics or any of the glamour stuff, because I mean, those we see as tangible. Like we imagine, oh, in a couple of years, I'll have a robot here that's going to be cooking pancakes for me. Yeah, maybe, if you can afford it, possible. That's the plan. But people forget that, do we have all those critical metals to even make that happen? Or is it that we're going to be asking China to process stuff and asking them to send it and be at their beholden? Are we going to be beholden to another country for any of our energy needs? And if so, what does that look like? So big questions. And these are big questions people have to get their head around. And I see that all of the narratives, even if you are 100% on board, a far left person who believes that 2050 is it, we're in trouble. You have to do the homework to find out what it takes to make all of these solutions that you want, whether it's solar, wind, hydro, any of that. What are the ingredients to bake those cakes? Go find out. Come to us. We'll help you to have a discussion about it. That's what we're here for. And the more that we help to educate people and we share things like this and other, whether it's Rick Rule or Steve Hyland from the Deep Dive, you name it, there's tons of people doing outstanding work, getting the message out there, and we need to be doing the same. Anyways, everyone, happy Friday. I'm pumped. I am. I think it's going to be challenging, but the year ahead, we have a lot of potential, a lot of hope. We're sitting in that unknown area because we don't have knowns. Especially here in Canada. They have them in the States. They're off to the races. But if we see where they're going and the optimism down there, it's going to be infectious. And there's every possibility and every chance that that could come here. Okay, everyone, have a great weekend. I love all the comments and messages. Reach out. We love to engage with people. And we'll see you again next week.
Drilled it expecting to get more, 1.5% nickel type thing, which would be fun, which would be great. you get a lot of happy people finding a 1.5% nickel. Nonetheless, what we found was something completely different. We found our discovery hole was almost 8 meters of what was about 1 ounce PGMs, 1.5% copper, and it was 60 meters from surface. So it was quite a surprise, and obviously a happy surprise. We hit some amazing holes, really. Each one sort of better than the next. We had, I don't know, at least, 5 or 6 holes of 10 meters or 10% copper equivalent or better, some over 20%. Unheard of holes, really, anywhere in the world, in the history of the world. So that's how good it was. And, so that, made us really sort of rethink what we had here.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's take. Today, we're talking about, and I love the fact that they're able to put a press release saying remarkable in the headlines, especially when talking about a junior mining discovery. Pretty incredible coming out of the Gold Digger property for Goliath Resources.
Was only recently the snow melted, and guess what? It exposed these beautiful veins like the Sherbet. They did a lot of channel sampling. Very early time period, and they got some really nice thicknesses, but also really nice grades. Like, they see a lot of visible gold here, and that's not really a big surprise, because if you look, way back to the first season, I think they drilled was 2021, and they did metallurgical work shortly after that because they did see a lot of visible gold in holes. They took my advice. They did a round of metallurgy, I think, in late 21 and early 22, and then they did another one in late 22 and early 23. And both rounds of testing, just hands down, demonstrated absolutely fantastic recoveries. The metallurgical results to date speak volumes about the very high quality of this deposit.
This is glacial recession, so this is hidden under a glacier for a long period of time. So it is rare that you get this situation where you get to find a full green story, but this is a greenfield project that is rare and amazing. Beautiful. Thanks so much, Dr. Henning. I really appreciate you spending all the time with us, and we'll chat with you soon. I'm sure you're going to be busy over the next couple of months here for sure.